I've talked a lot about Type Moon on Weird Fighting Games, but I've never talked about French Bread despite being the developers of Melty Blood. Today, we're going to fix that by looking at a game that predates Melty Blood and, in some ways, can be considered its prototype. Before Melty Blood, there was Glove on Fight. Welcome to Weird Fighting Games. In Type Moon, June, Episode 11, Glove on Fight. Glove on Fight is a 1v1 doujin fighting game developed by Watanabe Productions and released in May of 2002. It's a fan-made crossover fighter featuring characters from various visual novels and anime. For those unaware, before French Bread was French Bread, they were Watanabe Productions, and after the release of Melty Blood React, they would become Soft Circle French Bread. This would be the last game Watanabe Productions would release before debuting Melty Blood later that same year. However, Glove on Fight could be considered the Melty Blood prototype. Besides having two Tsukihime characters in it, according to Glove on Fight's Wikipedia page, it was developed to test routines that the programmers would use in Melty Blood. In programming, routines are pieces of code that are used to handle tasks you want to use over and over again, like saving your game, for example. That's a really simplified way of describing it, but I imagine people don't watch these videos for programming insight. Basically, work done on Glove on Fight helped the development process of Melty Blood go smoother because they were able to reuse already written code. Take that with a grain of salt though, because the source cited for this claim is a Japanese gaming magazine I cannot find anywhere online. It sure would be convenient if I had a copy myself. Although, there is some evidence that the game did influence Melty Blood in more ways than one, but put a pin in that, we'll get back to it later. Glove on Fight's name is a parody of the game Groove on Fight, a Japanese exclusive fighting game that's a part of the super underrated Power Instinct series. However, this parody is only surface level, as the gameplay is radically different from Groove on Fight. The greatest similarity between the two is the logo and the box art. This game is very high energy. It reminds me a lot of Third Strike mixed with pop music and a healthy amount of 2000s otaku culture. If you're gonna do a crossover, official or not, this is what you want to go with. It should always be treated as a big event. Even though I'm not familiar with all of these characters, I can tell that this is special and you can really feel the love and care the developers put into this crossover. The art style in Glove on Fight is one of the most unique we've seen on weird fighting games. The characters' proportions have been greatly exaggerated, specifically on the hands. Street Fighter does the same thing. The hands and feet are made bigger so the attacks are easier to follow. This is very important in Glove on Fight as one of the main system mechanics revolves around being able to react to attacks. The exaggerated proportions also help sell the impact of a lot of the attacks. When a character is reeling from a strong attack, you can really feel it. Each character has been homogenized, so they all fit together without clashing styles, while also staying recognizable and true to their source materials. The aesthetic is very much of its time. You could show a screenshot of the game to anyone even remotely familiar with anime art styles, and they'd be able to guess when this game came out. If I were to look at this game's art style when it came out, I don't think I'd like it much, because it vaguely looks like a hodgepodge of everything else at the time. But looking at it now, I can't help but appreciate what Glove on Fight is going for and just how well each character translates into the art style. The best way to describe Glove on Fight's gameplay is it's a fighting game with a strong boxing influence. There is no jumping or blocking, so for all you jokers saying, I paid $60 for a fighting game, not a blocking game, then Glove on Fight is the game for you. There are 3 attack buttons. Light attacks on the A button for fast hits, heavy attacks on the B button for stronger but slow hits, and then there's the C button, which serves as both a dodge and your dedicated super button. Everything works like you'd expect, except to KO your opponent, you have to deplete all of their health and then land an attack that sends them careening off the screen. Usually with a heavy attack, but that's not always the case, as some light attacks and supers can do this as well. The dodge is one of your only defensive mechanics. If an attack is successfully dodged, your character will flash blue and you'll be invulnerable for a little bit of time. If a light attack is dodged, you really don't have much to worry about, but it'll create this mind game between the 2 players. Does the player that dodged do it again, or should they try to counter attack with a fast move, or bet it all on a heavy attack for big damage? How should the attacking player respond? It's all fundamental fighting game stuff and can result in matches becoming this really tense mind game that has devastating consequences. On the other hand, if you dodge a heavy attack or even a super, your opponent just invited you to land a huge combo courtesy of their face. Speaking of combos, this game doesn't really have any, which makes sense given its boxing influence, but that doesn't mean they're non-existent. If an attack lands as a counter hit, you can immediately cancel that attack's recovery into almost any other action, and that attack gets a damage multiplier depending on what connected, ×2 for regular attacks and ×4 for super attacks. So if you land a quick jab counter, you can capitalize on that by canceling into one of your faster heavy attacks for a good chunk of damage. Each attack can be inputted with a direction that will change what kind of punch you do. The standard punches aren't that fancy. Supers, on the other hand, do chunks of damage, but they lean more towards the fighting game sides of things. Some of these attacks are just insane. A super can be as simple as a jet upper or as complex as whipping out the conceptual weapon that looks like a pile bunker but has a spirit in it that looks like a blonde horse girl. Some supers rely on the dodge mechanic, as they'll hit you first if you don't dodge out of the way, which I found fun. Supers can also be directly countered by other supers. If your opponent supers, you can immediately do your own super move to counter, but this is more of a call out than a direct counter. It's like saying, oh, you're gonna super? No, I'm going to super, and then leaving the rest up to fate. No one wins by playing it safe all of the time. The core system mechanics are very simple, but there is enough here to have a fun time, especially if you know some of the characters. Despite the simplicity of the system mechanics, the characters in Glove on Fight shine. You've got a good selection of characters, you may or may not have heard of, CL and Satsuki from Tsukihime, Akiko and Ayu from the visual novel K-Anon, Ayaka from the visual novel To Heart, Dejiko from the manga/anime DG Charat, Seika from the game Gun Parade March, and Ikoko, who isn't from any piece of media. No, you see, Ikoko is the mascot for the Echo Ice air conditioners made by the Tohoku Electric Power Company. I never thought I'd play as an air conditioning mascot, yet here we are. Ayu is as standard as it gets, and is a good pick if you're playing for the first time. Her punches aren't too complicated to use, and her supers are easy to understand. My favorite has to be this brutal 2-hit combo, but growing angel wings and flying across the screen is a close second. Ikoko has a longer range than most thanks to her flipper jabs. She can summon an army of penguins that run across the stage. They don't do much damage, but can lock the opponent down, letting her reposition or go in to try and score more damage. You know, that penguin outfit just reminds me of someone. Seika can deliver slow but devastating punches. Her supers have to be the most unconventional so far, as she can summon a mech to deliver a big punch, or skip the formalities and rain down a hail fire of bullets. If that's not your style, you can summon a car to do some good old-fashioned vehicular manslaughter, but you have to be careful as the car can hit you too, so make sure you press that dodge button. She also has this install that gives her super armor, which I'm sure is some cool reference, but I can't read Japanese. Hey, wait a minute. I've seen this before. Oh snap, it's Koma Kishima from Type Lumina. Dejiko, being a cat thing, of course means that she is very, very fast. Her punches might not be the strongest, but her speed more than makes up for it as she delivers rapid blows. 2 of her supers stun the opponent, letting her get a free hit, but if that's not your style, you can always peep the eye lasers, which is something cat-adjacent characters have in these games apparently. Akiko is unique because she has a teleport dash like M. Bison, or Slayer. It's a lot of fun teleporting around the screen, going in and out at a moment's notice. She also has this block move by pressing C and forward or down forward, but I found that it wasn't very useful, especially when you could just dodge instead. She has one of my favorite supers, which I like to call the Chop of Doom. It's really satisfying to land and even more satisfying to KO with, although it's really slow and really easy to dodge. Ayaka is Glove on Fight's one and only boss character. She fights using her fists and the person that is currently taped to her back. She can use magic. As far as boss characters go, she's pretty balanced. Having another person strapped to her back is certainly an interesting choice, but I can't say that that's not memorable. I've saved the best for last, CL and Satsuki. Unlike the other 2 characters in Glove on Fight, these 2 would go on to star in the Melty Blood series and become fan favorites. So the question has to be asked, do they play anything like they would in Melty Blood? While CL shares some similarities with her Melty counterpart, it has more to do with both games pulling from Tsukihime than ideas being reused for Melty. Like, of course CL is going to use her pile bunker, that's just her thing. CL is pretty standard as far as characters go in this game, but all of her supers are really slow, and I find it makes her really unfun to play, unfortunately. There are a lot of cool references to Tsukihime though, but obviously this means that CL needs to be buffed in Type Lumina again, preferably buff-powered CL 3 more times. Satsuki, on the other hand, is shockingly similar to her Melty incarnation. For one, she's this game's only grappler. Certain moves have armor, like in Melty, and many moves are shared between the 2 games, like her spinning wind-up punch or her ground pound. It's 1-to-1. I don't think you can deny that Glove on Fight's interpretation of Satsuki directly inspired her Melty counterparts in more ways than one. Glove on Fight is an interesting piece of French-bred history. After this, they would go on to make Melty, and the rest is history. Interestingly enough, Glove on Fight would get a sequel in 2008 with a cast of fully original characters, and I'm not really sure if I'm a fan of that, since A big part of this game's appeal is the crossover. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll come back for round 2. Glove on Fight isn't the most in-depth fighting game out there. You're not going to find some technical masterpiece here. What you will find is a fun pick-up-and-play fighter with a lot of charm. Next time on Type Moon June, we'll be looking at another doujin fighting game that I found in the depths of the internet. Until that time comes, thanks for watching and have a happy Type Moon June.